Oodle? Don't think it's quite open yet. Oh, wait, is it? Oh, wait, is it? Yeah, it is. Okay. Oh, hang on. Uh, so how come this is not showing up? Oh, well. Anyway, stream has started. Uh, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to night 2 of these Christmas streams, where we're just going to go over a little bit of history about of Christmas and some historical events that took place. And at the very end, the bonus treat, a reading of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So, oh, hang on. Got a little bit of a wonky thing going on here. Hold up. Oh boy. Some weird technical issue on my end. Hang on a second. I need a toggle for like a technical difficulties. Please stand by screen. Okay, never mind. We're good. All right. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So all the articles that we're going to be reading today are via history.com. As for they're significantly accurate or not, I don't know, but hey, this is all just for fun, just for the holiday stuff, you know? Anyway, we're going to talk about Santa Claus. And here's the table of contents. And yeah, this looks like there's quite a bit to read here. So, Santa Claus, otherwise known as St. Nicholas or Kris Kringle, has a long history steeped in Christmas traditions. Excuse me, sorry, I have to clear my throat. Today he is thought of mainly as the jolly man in red who brings toys to good girls and boys on Christmas Eve night. But his story stretches all the way back to the 3rd century when the real St. Nicholas walked the earth and became the patron saint of children. Find out more about the history of Santa Claus from his earliest origins to the shopping mall Santas of today, and discover how 2 New Yorkers, Clement Clark Moore and Thomas Nast, were major influencers on the Santa Claus millions of children wait for each Christmas. Where did Santa Claus originate? The legend of Santa Claus can be traced back hundreds of years to a monk named St. Nicholas. It is believed Nicholas was born sometime around AD 280 in Patara near Mira in modern-day Turkey. Much admired for his piety and kindness, Sir Nicholas became the subject of many legends. It is said that he gave away all of his inherited wealth and traveled the countryside helping the poor and sick. One of the best-known St. Nicholas stories is the time he saved 3 poor sisters from being sold into slavery or prostitution by their father by providing them with a dowry so they could marry. Over the course of many years, Nicholas's popularity spread, and he became known as the protector of children and sailors. His feast is celebrated on the anniversary of his death, December 6th. This was traditionally considered a lucky day to make large purchases or to get married. By the Renaissance, St. Nicholas was the most popular saint in Europe. Even after the Protestant Reformation, when the veneration of saints began to be discouraged, St. Nicholas maintained a positive reputation, especially in Holland. St. Nicholas, the protector of children and sailors, became the most popular saint in Europe by the Renaissance. Sinterklaas comes to New York. St. Nicholas made his first inroads into American popular culture towards the end of the 18th century. In December 1773 and again in 1774, a New York newspaper reported that groups of Dutch families had gathered to honor the anniversary of his death. The name Santa Claus evolved from Nick's Dutch nickname, Sinterklaas, a shortened form of Sint Nicolaas, Dutch for St. Nicholas. In 1804, New York Historical Society member John Pintar distributed woodcuts of St. Nicholas at the Society's annual meeting. The background of the engraving contains now familiar Santa images, including stockings filled with toys and fruit hung over a fireplace. In 1809, Washington Irving helped to popularize the Santa Claus stories when he referred to St. Nicholas as the patron saint of New York in his book, The History of New York. As his prominence grew, Santa Claus was described as everything from a rascal with a blue three-cornered hat, red waistcoat, and yellow stockings to a man wearing a broad-brimmed hat and a huge pair of Flemish trunk hose. Did you know? Salvation Army has been sending Santa Claus-clad donation collectors into the streets since the 1890s. I haven't seen much of those lately, though. But then again, I've just been working. And Salvation Army people outside where I work, they're just regular folk. They're not dressed up at all. I remember when times were a lot simpler as a kid. We used to see stuff like that all the time. Anyway, speaking of people dressing up as Santa, the shopping mall Santas. Gift giving, mainly centered around children, has been an important part of the Christmas celebration since the holiday's rejuvenation in the early 19th century. Stores began to advertise Christmas shopping in 1820, and by the 1840s, newspapers were creating separate sections for holiday advertisements that often featured images of the newly popular Santa Claus. In 1841, thousands of children visited a Philadelphia shop to see a life-size Santa Claus model. It was only a matter of time before stores began to attract children and their parents with the lure of a peek at a live Santa Claus. In the early 1890s, the Salvation Army needed money to pay for the free Christmas meals they provided to needy families. They began dressing up unemployed men in Santa Claus suits and sending them into the streets of New York to solicit donations. Those familiar Salvation Army Santas and other volunteers have been ringing bells on the street corners of America's cities ever since. Perhaps the most iconic department store Santa is Kris Kringle in the 1947 classic Santa Claus movie, Miracle on 34th Street. Sorry, I have to keep clearing my throat. A young Natalie Wood played a little girl who believes Kris Kringle when he says he is the real Santa Claus. Edmund Gwenn won an Oscar for originating the role of Kris Kringle. The 1994 remake of the movie starred Richard Attenborough and Mara Wilson. The Macy's Santa had appeared in almost every Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade since it began in 1924. Fans of all ages still line up to meet the Macy's Santa in New York City and at stores around the country, where children can take pictures on Santa's lap and tell him what they want for Christmas. What does Santa look like? In 1822, an apostle minister named Clement Clark Moore wrote a long Christmas poem for his three daughters entitled A Visit from St. Nicholas, more popularly known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." Moore's poem, which he was initially hesitant to publish due to the frivolous nature of its subject, is largely responsible for our modern image of Santa Claus as a right jolly old elf, with a portly figure and the supernatural ability to ascend the chimney with the mere nod of his head. Although some of Moore's imagery was probably borrowed from other sources, his poem helped popularize the now familiar image of a Santa Claus who flew from house to house on Christmas Eve in a miniature sleigh, led by 8 flying reindeer to leave presents for deserving children. A Visit from St. Nicholas created a new and immediately popular American icon. In 1881, political cartoonist Thomas Nast drew on Moore's poem to create the first likeness that matches our modern image of Santa Claus. His cartoon, which appeared in Harper's Weekly, depicted Santa as a round, cheerful man with a full white beard, holding a sack laden with toys for lucky children. It was Nast who gave Santa his bright red suit trimmed with white fur. North Pole Workshop, Elves and His Wife, Mrs. Claus. Santa Claus Around the World. America's Santa Claus is not the only St. Nicholas inspired gift giver to make an appearance at Christmas time. There are similar figures in Christmas traditions around the world. Christkind, or Kris Kringle, was believed to deliver presents to well behaved Swiss and German children. Meaning Christ child, Christkind is an angel like figure often accompanied by St. Nicholas on his holiday missions. Interesting. In Scandinavia, a jolly elf named Jultomten, Jultomten, I think that's how you pronounce it. If anyone from Scandinavia is watching, I apologize for butchering that. Anyway, Jultomten was thought to deliver gifts in a sleigh drawn by goats. English legend explains that Father Christmas visits each home on Christmas Eve to fill children's stockings with holiday treats. Père Noël, responsible for filling the shoes of French children. I might have mispronounced that. I apologize to the French. In Italy, there is the story of a woman called La Befana, a kindly witch who rides broomsticks down the chimneys of Italian homes to deliver toys into the stockings of lucky children. Now, see, that's like a mix between Christmas and Halloween right there. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. I'll have to look up more of that. Santa traditions in the United States. In the United States, Santa Claus is often depicted as flying from his home to home on Christmas Eve to deliver toys to children. He flies on his magic sleigh led by his reindeer: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, and Rudolph. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. Sorry. Santa enters each home through the chimney, which is why empty Christmas stockings, once empty socks, now often dedicated to stockings made for the occasion, are hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there, as Clement Clarke Moore wrote in his famous poem. Stockings can be filled with candy canes and other treats or small toys. In return, children often leave cookies and milk for Santa and carrots for his reindeer. Santa Claus and his wife, Mrs. Claus, call the North Pole home, and children write letters to Santas and track Santa's progress around the world on Christmas Eve. Throughout the year, Santa Claus is said to keep a naughty list and a nice list to determine who deserves gifts on Christmas morning. Parents often invoke these lists as a way to ensure their children are on their best behavior. The lists are immortalized in the 1934 song, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. He's making a list and checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and sing this for you guys. Just as a little treat. You're welcome. This is a Christmas thing. Oh, he's making a list and checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty and nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. You're welcome. Anyway, Santa's ninth reindeer, Rudolph. Rudolph, the most famous reindeer of them all, was born over 100 years after his 8 flying counterparts. Oh, I didn't know about that. We're getting lore drops on Rudolph here, folks. The Red-Nosed Wonder was the creation of Robert L. May, a copywriter at the Montgomery Ward department store. In 1939, May wrote a Christmas-themed story to help bring the holiday traffic into the store. Using a similar rhyme pattern to Moore's "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," May told the story of Rudolph, a young reindeer who was teased by the other deer because of his large red nose that glowed. When Christmas Eve turned foggy and Santa worried that he wouldn't be able to deliver gifts that night, the former outcast saved Christmas by leading the sleigh by the light of his red nose. Rudolph's message that given the opportunity, a liability can be turned into an asset proved popular. Montgomery Ward gave away almost 2.5 million copies of the poem in 1939. When it was reissued in 1946, the book sold over 3.5 million copies. 3 years later, one of May's friends named Johnny Marks wrote a short song based on Rudolph's story. It was recorded by Gene Autry and sold over 2 million copies. Since then, the story has been translated into 25 languages and has been made into a television movie narrated by Burl Ives, which has charmed audiences every year since 1964. Well, and that's the end of that one. All right. Now on to our next one. The history of Christmas trees. And there's our table of contents. This has 6 parts. The origin of Christmas trees stretches all the way back to the use of evergreens in ancient Egypt and Rome. However, Germany is credited with popularizing candlelit Christmas trees as we know them today. In the 1800s, this tradition made its way to America. Discover the history of the Christmas tree, from the earliest winter solstice celebration to Queen Victoria's decorating habits and the annual lighting of the Rockefeller Center tree in New York City. Christmas tree origins. Long before the advent of Christianity, plants and trees that remained green all year had a special meaning for people in the winter. Just as people today decorate their homes during the festive season with pine, spruce, and fir trees, many ancient peoples hung evergreen boughs over their doors and windows. In many countries, they believed evergreens would keep away witches, ghosts, evil spirits, and illness. Huh, interesting. Many ancient people believed that the sun was a god and that winter came every year because the sun god had become sick and weak. They celebrated the winter solstice, the shortest day and the longest night of the year, falling on December 21st or December 22nd in the northern hemisphere, because it meant that, at last, the sun god would begin to get well. Evergreen boughs reminded them of all the green plants that would grow again when the sun god was strong and summer would return. The ancient Egyptians worshipped a god called Ra, who had the head of a hawk and wore the sun as a blazing disk in his crown. At the winter solstice, when Ra began to recover from his illness, the Egyptians filled their homes with green palms and papyrus reeds to symbolize the triumph of life over death. Did you know Christmas trees are grown in all 50 states, including Hawaii and Alaska? I didn't know they grew those in Hawaii. Interesting. We're learning all kinds of things tonight. Early Romans marked the solstice with a feast called Saturnalia. Saturnalia, I think that's how you pronounce it. In honor of Saturn. Yeah, Saturnalia. In honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture, the Romans knew that the solstice meant that farms and orchards would be green and fruitful soon. To mark the occasion, they decorated their homes and temples with evergreen boughs. In northern Europe, the Druids, the priests of the ancient Celts, also decorated their temples with evergreen boughs as a symbol of everlasting life. The Vikings in Scandinavia honored mistletoe and another type of evergreen for its role in the death of Balder, a god of light. German roots. Germany is credited with starting the Christmas tree tradition as we know it. By the 16th century, sources record devout Christians bringing decorated trees into their homes. Some built Christmas pyramids of wood and decorated them with evergreens and candles if resources were scarce. It is a widely held belief that Martin Luther, the 16th century Protestant reformer, first added lighted candles to a tree. According to a common version of the story, walking home one winter evening, Luther was awed by the stars twinkling amidst evergreens. To recapture the scene for his family, he erected a tree in the main room and wired its branches with lit candles. Martin Luther did that? Wow. I'm actually kind of enjoying the fact we're learning all this new stuff. This is kind of cool. America adopts Christmas trees. Most 19th century Americans found Christmas trees an oddity. The first records of Christmas trees being cut for display come from the 1820s in Pennsylvania's German community, though trees might have been a tradition there even earlier. As early as 1747, Moravian, I think it's Moravian Germans. God, I can't believe I'm botching pronunciations of stuff. I'm trying, chat. Moravian Germans in eastern Pennsylvania had a community tree in the form of a wooden pyramid decorated with candles. But as late as the 1840s, most Americans viewed Christmas trees as pagan symbols and shunned them. It is not surprising that, like many other festive Christmas customs, the tree was adopted solely in America. New England's first Puritan leaders viewed Christmas celebrations as unholy. The Pilgrims' second governor, William Bradford, wrote that he tried hard to stamp out pagan mockery of the observance, penalizing any frivolity. In 1659, the General Court of Massachusetts enacted a law making any observance of December 25th a penal offense. People were fined for hanging decorations. Jesus Christ. A stern solemnity continued until the influx of German and Irish immigrants in the 19th century undermined the Puritan legacy. Jesus Christ, what a weird time in history that was for America. Queen Victoria helped change American attitudes towards Christmas trees. In 1846, the popular British royal and her German-born husband, Prince Albert, were sketched in the Illustrated London News standing with their children around a Christmas tree. That must be it right there. Yeah, this is the drawing from the Illustrated London News. Huh. Man, they had such nice illustrations back in that time. Unlike the previous royal family, Victoria was beloved by her subjects. What was done at court immediately became fashionable, not only in Britain, but also with fashion-conscious East Coast American society. The Christmas tree had arrived. By the 1890s, Christmas ornaments were arriving from Germany, and Christmas tree popularity was on the rise through the U.S., as it was noted that the Europeans used small trees about 4 feet in height, while Americans liked their Christmas trees to extend from floor to ceiling. America. Anyway. The early 20th century saw Americans decorating their trees mainly with homemade ornaments, while many German Americans continued to use apples, nuts, and marzipan cookies. Stringed popcorn, dyed bright colors and interlaced with berries and nuts, became another popular tree decoration. Electricity brought about Christmas lights, making it possible for Christmas trees to glow for days on end. With this, Christmas trees began to appear in town squares across the country, and having a Christmas tree in the home became an American tradition. Rockefeller Center Christmas Tree. As many as 30 million real Christmas trees are sold in the United States today. Among the most iconic is the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, which is installed annually outside the Rockefeller Center in New York City. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree dates back to fumbled my words there. Dates back to the Depression era. The first tree, placed in 1931, was a small, unadorned tree set up by construction workers at the center of the construction site. 2 years later, another tree was placed there, this time with lights. These days, the giant Rockefeller Center tree is laden with over 50,000 Christmas lights and topped by 70-point LED stars studded with 3 million Swarovski crystals. Swarovski. Oh my god, I can't fucking pronounce stuff tonight. Swarovski crystals. That's what I meant to say. Sorry about the F-bomb there. I'm trying to keep it cheery. Tallest tree displayed at the Rockefeller Center arrived in 1999. It was a Norway spruce that measured 100 feet tall and hailed from Killingworth, Connecticut. Wow, that's a big old tree. Christmas trees around the world. Christmas trees in Canada. German settlers began migrating to Canada from the United States in the 1700s. They brought Canada's first Christmas trees and, in later generations, gingerbread houses and advent calendars. When Queen Victoria and Prince Albert put up a Christmas tree at Windsor Castle in 1848, Christmas trees became a widely popular tradition throughout England, the United States, and Canada. Christmas trees in Mexico. In most Mexican homes, the principal holiday adornment is El Nacimiento. Nacimiento? I don't know if I pronounced that right. Again, I'm so sorry if I keep butchering. I would say botchering. It's botching and butchering. I guess that's a word. Anyway, the nativity scene. However, a decorated Christmas tree might be incorporated in the nacimiento or set up elsewhere in the home. As purchase of a natural pine represents a luxury commodity to most Mexican families, a typical arbolito or little tree is often an artificial one, a bare branch cut from a copal tree, or some type of shrub collected from the countryside. Hey, you got to make do with what you got to have, you know? Christmas trees in Great Britain. The Norway spruce is the traditional species used to decorate homes in Britain. This tree type was a native species in the British Isles before the last ice age and was reintroduced to the region before the 1500s. And Christmas trees in Greenland. Since icy Greenland lacks large native forest, most Christmas trees are imported. They are decorated with candles and bright ornaments. Oh my god, it keeps going. Christmas trees in Guatemala. Christmas tree has joined the Nacimiento as a popular ornament because of the large German population in Guatemala. There's a lot of Germans in Guatemala. I didn't know that. Christmas trees in Brazil. Although Christmas falls during the summer in most of Brazil, sometimes pine trees are decorated with little pieces of cotton that represent falling snow. That's nice. And that's actually kind of cute. Christmas trees in Ireland. Christmas trees are bought any time in December and decorated with colored lights, tinsel, and baubles. Some people favor an angel on top of the tree, others opt for a star. Homes are decorated with garlands, candles, holly, and ivy. Wreaths and mistletoe are hung on the door. Christmas trees in Sweden. Most people buy Christmas trees well before Christmas Eve, but it is not common to take the tree inside and decorate it until just a few days before. Evergreen trees are trimmed with stars, sunbursts, and snowflakes made from straw. Other decorations include wonderful wooden animals and straw centerpieces. Oh wow, this just keeps going. We're learning all kinds of cool stuff here. Christmas trees across the world. We're taking a global lesson. Woo! Anyway. Christmas trees in Norway. Norwegians often take a trip to the woods to select a Christmas tree, an outing that their grandparents probably did not make. The Christmas tree was not introduced into Norway from Germany until the latter half of the 19th century. To the country districts, it came even later. Many families decorate their trees on December 23rd, which is known as Little Christmas Eve. I like that. Instead of Christmas Eve Eve, it's Little Christmas Eve. I'm going to start using that now. That's awesome. A Norwegian ritual known as circling the Christmas tree follows, where everyone joins hands to form a ring around the tree and then walks around it singing carols. Christmas trees in Ukraine. Celebrated on December 25th by Catholics and on January 7th by Orthodox Christians, Christmas is the most popular holiday in Ukraine. During the Christmas season, which also includes New Year's Day, people decorate fir trees and have parties. Ukrainians sound like my kind of people. Christmas trees in Spain. A popular Christmas custom is Catalonia I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. A decorated log that children feed scraps of food during the days before Christmas. On the holiday, the log is covered with a blanket and the children hit it with a stick. Then the blanket is removed to reveal the treats like toffee and hazelnuts that it had consumed. Oh, that's cool. Christmas trees in Italy. In one Italian tradition, the Presepio, Presepio or Precipio. I don't know the pronunciation of that. Any Italians in the chat, you can correct me, and I apologize. Anyone from any nationality in any country watching this right now, I apologize for butchering pronunciations. I'm still learning. Precipio is a miniature representation of the Holy Family in the stable. The display, which translates to manger or crib, is the center of Christmas for families. Guests kneel before it and musicians sing before it. The Precipio figures are usually hand-carved and very detailed in features and dress. The scene is often set out in the shape of a triangle. It provides the base of a pyramid-like structure called the cipo, or is it cipo? Is it cipo because of the pronunciation, Italian pronunciation? I don't know. This is a wooden frame arranged to make a pyramid several feet high. Several tiers of thin shelves are supported by this frame. It is entirely decorated with colored paper, gilt pine cones, and miniature colored pennants. Small candles are fastened to the tapering sides. A star or small doll is hung in the apex of the triangular sides. The shelves above the manger scene have small gifts of fruit, candy, and presents. The chipo is likely related to older tree of light traditions linked to Christmas trees in other countries. Some houses even have a chipo for each child in the family. That's really nice. Christmas trees in Germany. Many Christmas traditions practiced around the world today started in Germany. As mentioned above, some Lutheran traditions credit Martin Luther with placing the first lighted candles on a Christmas tree. Another legend says that the early 16th century, people in Germany combined two customs that have been practiced in different countries around the globe to create the modern tree tradition. The first was the paradise tree, a fir tree decorated with apples that represented the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. Ooh. The second, a small pyramid-like frame known as the Christmas light and usually decorated with glass balls, tinsels, and a candle on top, was a symbol of the birth of Christ as the light of the world. Germans changed the tree's apples to tinsel balls and cookies and placed a light on top to mirror today's Christmas tree decorations. One modern custom for parents is to decorate the Tannenbaum, German for Christmas tree. I have heard of that. And the secret with lights, tinsel, and ornaments. The tree is then lit and revealed on Christmas Eve with cookies, nuts, and gifts under its branches. Very nice. Christmas trees in South Africa. Christmas is a summer holiday in South Africa. Although Christmas trees are not common, windows are often draped with a sparkling cotton wool and tinsel. Christmas trees in Saudi Arabia. Christian Americans, Europeans, Indians, Filipinos, and others living in Saudi Arabia have to celebrate Christmas privately in their homes. Christmas lights are generally not tolerated. Most families place their Christmas trees somewhere inconspicuous. Oh. I would say I'm a bit surprised, but I'm kind of not. Anyway, Christmas trees in the Philippines. Fresh pine trees are too expensive for many Filipinos, so handmade trees in an array of colors and sizes are often used. Star lanterns, or parol, appear everywhere in December. They are made from bamboo sticks covered with brightly colored rice paper or cellophane, and usually feature a tassel on each point. There is usually one in every window, each representing a star of Bethlehem. Oh, that's cool. Christmas trees in China. More than 80% of the world's artificial Christmas trees are made in China, but a much smaller portion of Chinese people celebrate Christmas as a religious holiday. Those who do often put up artificial trees, trees of light decorated with paper chains and lanterns. Christmas trees in Japan. For most of the Japanese who celebrate Christmas, it's purely a secular holiday devoted to the love of their children. Oh, that's really sweet. Christmas trees are decorated with small toys, dolls, paper ornaments, gold paper fans, and lanterns, as well as wind chimes. Ooh, very festive. Miniature candles are also placed along the tree branches. One of the most popular ornaments is the origami crane. Japanese children have exchanged thousands of folded paper birds of peace with young people all over the world as a pledge that war must not happen again. Okay, see, I did not know that. That's cool. Now, this is not really related to Christmas trees, but another thing that the Japanese really like to do when it comes to Christmas is eat fried chicken. Apparently, KFC, from what I understand, tell me if I'm wrong, but apparently in Japan on Christmas, KFC is like a huge deal. Like they love their fried chicken on Christmas. that's that's just from things I've seen and a couple of videos I watched on it, but if anyone just correct me, please do. That's just something I've seen in observation, so just tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, Christmas tree trivia and facts. Wow, we still got a ways to go on this one. This is a lengthy article. Dang. Anyway, Christmas trees have been sold commercially in the United States since about 1850. Most Christmas trees are cut weeks before they get into a retail outlet. Sounds about right. On average, it takes 7 years for a Christmas tree to grow to a typical height between 6 and 7 feet. The best selling types of Christmas trees include the Scotch pine, Douglas fir, Fraser fir, balsam fir, and blue spruce. Other species, such as cherry and hawthorns, were used in the past. Between 1887 and 1933, a fishing schooner called the Christmas Ship would tie up at the Clark Street Bridge in Chicago to sell spruce and pine trees from Michigan. The much disputed title for the tallest living Christmas tree likely goes to an allegedly 160-foot Sitka spruce in Ferndale, California. Damn! Anyway, that's a big old tree. Franklin Pierce, the 14th president, is often credited with bringing the Christmas tree tradition to the White House in the early 1850s. Teddy Roosevelt banned the Christmas tree from the White House, possibly for environmental reasons, but his young son snuck a tree into the house anyway. Attaboy, son. And Teddy Roosevelt was awesome, but like, come on, dude. Your kid did the right thing there. In 1923, President Calvin Coolidge started the National Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony, now held every year on the White House lawn. In 1963, the National Christmas Tree was not lit until December 22nd because of a national 30-day period of mourning following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Ooh. In 1979, the National Christmas Tree was not lit except for the top ornament. This was done in honor of the American hostages in Iran. Wow, that's nuts. Since 1966, the National Christmas Tree Association has given a Christmas tree to the president and his first family. Christmas trees are grown in all 50 states, including Hawaii and Alaska. Yeah, we saw that one earlier. In 1912, what were likely the first major community Christmas trees in the United States were erected in Boston, New York City, and Hartford, Connecticut. Across the United States, Christmas trees grow on roughly 350,000 acres of land. Farmers plant between 900 and 17 trees per 1,700 trees per acre. 917 and 17 trees per acre. Oh my God, that would not be a lot of trees. Anywhere from 900 to 17 trees. Thomas Edison's assistants came up with the idea of electric lights for Christmas trees. Well, where'd you get that from, Edison? Like, yeah, you might want to explain that? Where do you got your work from, buddy? Anyway, if you know, you know. Tinsel used to be made with lead foil, but in the early 1970s, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration convinced manufacturers to switch to plastic tinsel. So it was made with lead? What the hell? In the first week, a tree in your home will consume as much as 3 quarts of water per day. Sounds about right. You should never burn your Christmas tree in the fireplace. It can contribute to creosote buildup. Huh. Interesting. Okay, there was another article I saw I just forgot to pull up, so we're gonna go find that real quick. It's about like NORAD, how they got started with tracking Santa. Oh, that's a video. Where is an actual article? Here we go. Oh, that's another watch. Come on, dude. The wrong number that launched the Santa tracker. Okay, that might be the one. Okay. We'll actually go ahead and read this one since we got it pulled up. The wrong number that launched the Santa tracker. How an accidental call to NORAD's top secret military hotline led to a Christmas tradition. Oh, this ought to be good. When the dreaded red phone rang inside the Continental Air Defense Command, CONAD. I thought that said gonad. Imagine if it was called that. Anyway, sorry. I thought that was really funny. I laugh at my own jokes. Anyway, when the dreaded red phone rang inside the Continental Air Defense Command, CONAD, Operations Center on the last day of November in 1955, the mood at the nerve center of America's nuclear defense turned tense. At a time when the Cold War raged and the Soviet fighter jets routinely buzzed dangerously close to Alaskan airspace, the U.S. Air Force Colonel Harry Shoup knew that a call on the top secret hotline couldn't be good news. Anxious that the caller might be the Pentagon or a four-star general warning of an atomic attack on the United States, Shoup steeled himself as he answered the hotline that was directly wired from his command post in Colorado Springs, Colorado, to the Pentagon. As Shoup recalled decades later in an oral history interview, he picked up the receiver and said, "Yes, sir, this is Colonel Shoup," met with only silence. He repeated, "Sir, this is Colonel Shoup." Still nothing. "Sir, can you read me all right?" Shoup asked before he received a most unexpected reply from a soft voice of a child. "Are you really Santa Claus?" Shoup's eyes immediately scanned the cavernous operations center. Who was the prankster? The deadly serious heart of America's defense against aerial assault was hardly the venue for a practical joke, and the colonel was not amused. "Would you repeat that, please?" Shoup barked. On the other end of the line, he heard the frightened youngster sobbing and realized that this was no joke. Some mix-up had compromised the top-secret hotline. Rather than admitting he wasn't Santa Claus, the 38-year-old father of four quickly assumed the part of Saint Nick and listened to the child's Christmas wish list. As reported in the press, the following day, the child had reversed 2 digits of a phone number to connect with Kris Kringle and instead reached one of America's most sensitive military installations. Oh my God. Whoa. When President Dwight D. Eisenhower formed CONAD, I was going to call it CONAD because CONAD just sounds too funny. Anyway, formed CONAD in 1954 to provide early warning of an aerial attack from enemies such as the Soviet Union, he tasked the Joint Military Command with scanning the skies for Reds, flying bomber planes, not a man in a red suit. There may be a guy called Santa at the North Pole, but he's not the one I worry about coming from that direction, Shoup told the International News Service. Still, the wrong number put the Colorado command post in a Yuletide mood and sparked a festive idea to soften its hard-edged public image. With an eye towards making its mission a little less scary to the American public, CONAD issued a press release that appeared in newspapers around the country on Christmas Eve, letting good little boys and girls know that it was tracking a big red sleigh approaching from the North Pole. The command said that the first reports of its radar and ground observation outposts indicated that Santa Claus was traveling at 45 knots per hour at an altitude of 35,000 feet. The release also contained a bit of propaganda that reassured children that American forces would guard Santa and his sleigh on his trip to and from the U.S. against possible attack from those who do not believe in Christmas. That was a clear allusion to the aesthetic Soviets and their fellow communists. When Shoup visited his troops on Christmas Eve to distribute cookies, He looked up at the 3-story tall map of the North American continent that dominated the operations center to see that someone had sketched Santa's sleigh descending from the North Pole alongside an unidentified along the unidentified objects detected in American airspace. According to Shoup's daughter, Terry Van Kuren, the jolly illustration sparked an idea in her father's mind. Calling for his public relations officer, the colonel arranged a phone call with a local radio station to report that Conad, I almost said the other one, Conad had spotted an unidentified flying object that looked like a sleigh. Other radio stations then began to phone in to get the latest updates on Santa's location, and a Christmas tradition was cemented. Oh, that's kind of cool, actually. The wires went nuts and it got bigger and better every year, Van Kuren says of the Santa tracking operation. Shoup became the known as the Santa Colonel, a nickname he embraced with pride. That's adorable. He was a very strict father, but he was a child about Christmas, Van Kuren says. He put the decorations up the day after Thanksgiving, and we were the first people I knew of who had bubble lights, which were brought back from Japan. In 1958, responsibility for the Santa tracker was transferred from CONAD to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, after the United States and Canada joined forces for the continent's nuclear defense. Today, the Santa tracker might be what NORAD is best known for beyond its star turn in the 1983 film War Games. Now officially known as NORAD Tracks Santa, the operation has evolved with technology and times. During the 1960s, NORAD mailed vinyl records to radio stations that featured pre recorded reports on Santa's progress and holiday music from its in house orchestra. NORAD had an in house orchestra? What? In the 70s, NORAD took over the airwaves with television commercials. In the digital age, St. Nick's real time progress can be monitored on social media, on smartphones, and tablets through the official app. I remember seeing this on the local news when I was a kid. And on the NORAD Tracks Santa's website, which is available in 8 languages. So that's like, as I said, I remember seeing something like this in, like on the local news when I was a kid. So I know the local news station would have like the NORAD Santa tracker up, and but they would have it just being like, "Oh, this is where Santa is now, and he'll be in the area within this amount of time. So better get the kids to bed," kind of thing. I just thought that was really super cool. But anyway, about 70 contributors helped set up the site, apps, and phone lines in 2024, while more than 500 uniformed personnel, Defense Department civilians, their families, and supporters volunteer time on Christmas Eve to answer children's questions on Santa's whereabouts. More than 500 uniformed personnel. Hang on. Oh, there we go. More than 500 uniformed personnel, Defense Department civilians, their families, and supporters volunteered time on Christmas Eve to answer children's questions. Santa's whereabouts. Yeah, they kind of repeated that on accident. In some cases, 3 generations have been doing this. It's part of their Christmas tradition, says Royal Canadian Navy Lieutenant Marco Chouinard, Chouinard, and NORAD spokesperson. Sorry if I completely botched that. With tens of thousands of calls expected, the phones are sure to be jingling at NORAD just as they were in 1955. Only this time, the hotline won't bring any surprises. Huh. So the whole thing with the NORAD tracker happened because a kid got 2 numbers switched up on a phone number, and he called the top secret government hotline. Holy crap, dude. That is wild. All right. Let me take a sip here. I got me some more holiday cheer. Shinerbach. Let's see, what is this stuff made of again? Let's see, this is a beer that is brewed with peaches and pecans. It does have a pretty holiday taste to it. I thought this was like a strawberry ale, but it's pretty good. Sorry about that, folks. Had a slight interruption during the time I muted because I didn't want to have y'all listen to me gulping down a beer. Anyway, where were we? Oh yes. Sorry about my squeaky chair. Squeaky. Anyway, we are moving on to. We'll sound like Kermit there for a second. We are moving on to how 25 Christmas traditions got their start. Anyway. Anyway. How 25 Christmas traditions got their start. Learn why we decorate trees, swap cookies, and hide pickles and elves, among other traditions. Hide pickles and elves? From its Puritan roots to complaints of rampant commercialism. What is it you want? Charlie Brown asked Lucy in A Charlie Brown Christmas. Real estate. Christmas in America has been filled with traditions, old and new. Some date back to 16th century Germany or even ancient Greek times, while others have caught on in modern times. Here's a look at 25 ways Americans have celebrated the Christmas season, from singing songs or reciting poems to decorating trees and swapping cookies to drinking eggnog and wearing ugly sweaters. Christmas trees, which we kind of already just went over this, but decorated trees date back to Germany in the Middle Ages, with German and other European settlers popularizing Christmas trees in America by the early 19th century. A New York woodsman named Mark Carr is credited with opening the first U.S. Christmas tree lot in 1851. 2019 survey by the American Christmas Tree Association, there's an association for that, predicted that 77% of U.S. households displayed a Christmas tree in their home. Among the trees on display, an estimated 81% were artificial and 19% were real. Honestly, for good reason. I don't blame them. The Rockettes. Since 1925, first known as the Missouri Rockets, this iconic dance troupe has been kicking up its heels, officially becoming the Radio City Music Hall Rockettes in 1934. Ooh, that's some holiday cheer. Pardon me, sorry about that. From performing at movie openings to entertaining troops to making TV appearances, they're perhaps best known for their annual Christmas spectacular. A Charlie Brown Christmas! Decades later, it may be hard to imagine that this beloved TV special inspired by Charles Schultz's Peanuts comic strip was first rejected by CBS executives. But when it finally aired on December 9th, 1965, almost half of all U.S. TV sets were tuned into the broadcast, and the show went on to win an Emmy, a Peabody, an enduring following, and an ever trend of Charlie Brown Christmas trees. I never thought it was such a bad little tree, Linus says in the special. It's not bad at all, really. Maybe it just needs a little love. Christmas pickles. Okay, I haven't heard of this one. This should be interesting. The Christmas pickle is designed to be hard to find. If there's a pickle among your snowman, angel, and reindeer ornaments, you're likely taking part in the American tradition of hiding the green ornament on the tree so that the first child to find it wins a gift, or gets to open the first present Christmas morning. The practice's origins are a bit murky, or should that be brainy? That's a joke I would make. But it's likely it grew from a Woolworth marketing gimmick from the late 1800s, when the retailer received imported German ornaments shaped like a pickle and needed a sales pitch. Is that a pickle in your tree, or are you just happy to celebrate Christmas? The Elf on the Shelf. Love it or loathe it, since 2005, moms and dads have either joyously or begrudgingly been hiding a toy elf each night from Thanksgiving to Christmas. More than 13 million elves have been adopted since 2005, when Carol Azerbold and her daughter, Abersold, that's what it is, and her daughter, Shonda Bell, published the book Elf on the Shelf, a Christmas tradition that comes with the toy. Social media has even inspired some parents to set up elaborate scenarios for their elves. as in he TP'd the tree. She filled the sink with marshmallows. The Yule log. Yule logs date back to ancient winter solstice. Yule logs were part of an ancient winter solstice celebration, but it was Americans who turned the wood burning into must-see TV. Back in 1966, WPIX TV in New York City aired a continuous 17-second loop of a fireplace for 3 hours along with holiday music. That led to eventual better production and nearly 20 years of annual viewing. Today you can view the Yule log on demand and on the web. In fact, history offers its own Yule log theme to the series Forged in Fire. That's hilarious. Plug. Advent calendars. Early versions of this tradition started in Germany in 1903 by publisher Gerhard Land. Gerhard Land offered a way for children to count down to Christmas by opening some door or window a day to reveal a Bible passage, poem, or small gift. Since gaining mass popularity by 1920, the calendars have evolved to secular calendars that include daily gifts from mini bottles of wine to nail polish to chocolates to action figures. Neato. Gingerbread houses. Although Queen Elizabeth I gets credit for the early decorating of gingerbread cookies, once again, it's the Germans who lay claim to starting the gingerbread house tradition. And when the German brothers Grimm wrote Hansel and Gretel, a new holiday tradition was born. Today, the edible decorations are available in a slew of pre-packed kits. The Nutcracker. You know you're a redneck when you think the Nutcracker is something you did off the high dive. Anyway. For many, the holiday season is not complete without a trip to watch this ballet. With the music by Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. God, I'm just botching the pronunciations tonight. And originally choreographed by Marius Petipa, the romance tale of the young Clara's Christmas Eve premiered December 18th, 1892 in St. Petersburg, Russia. It was performed for the first time outside of Russia in 1934 in England and made its way to the United States in 1944 when it was performed by the San Francisco Ballet. It became a must-see event in America in the 1960s as performances spread across the nation. Ugly Christmas sweaters. You can blame our neighbors to the north for this silly, ironic tradition that really gained steam in the 1980s. According to the Ugly Christmas Sweater Party Book, sweaters became a party trend in Vancouver, Canada in 2001. The trend is seemingly here to stay. According to Fox Business, the ugly sweater industry is a multi-million business. With websites such as Tipsy Elves, retailers including Macy's, Kohl's, and Target, and even food chains jumping on the ugly bandwagon. Not gonna lie, chat, there's a ugly Christmas sweater I saw one year I actually want. I saw it at a dealership, if you can believe this. It was at a Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealership. And it was an ugly sweater, but it had like the old Dodge Charger on it from like the 60s. And then like the typical writing they have for ugly Christmas sweaters, it says Hemi on it. I was like, you know what? Since I'm a car guy, I want that sweater. I will wear that ugly sweater. Cookies and milk for Santa. While leaving treats for Santa and his reindeer dates back to ancient Norse mythology, Americans began to sweeten up to the tradition during the Great Depression of the 1930s as a sign of showing gratitude during a time of struggle. Candy canes. Which, funnily enough, that is the next article. Whether devoured as a treat or hung on the tree as decoration, candy canes are the #1 selling non-chocolate candy during December and date back to 1670 Germany. The red and white peppermint sticks arrived stateside in 1847 when a German-Swedish immigrant in Wooster, Ohio placed them on a tree. Wooster? Huh. Interesting name for a city. By the 1950s, an automated candy cane making machine was invented, cementing their mass appeal. Boozy eggnog. Boozy, the eggest of nog. Nothing makes the holidays like a glass of spiked eggnog. Although the Yuletide cocktail stems from a posset, a drink made with hot curdled milk and ale or wine from medieval England, American colonists get credit for making it popular in adding rum. Even George Washington had a special recipe. Ooh, George Washington's eggnog. That sounds good. Door wreaths. Wreaths have been around since the ancient Greek and Roman times, but the evergreen Christmas wreath, often adorned with bows of holly, or boughs of holly, la 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 la, eventually took on Christian meaning, with the circular shape representing eternal life and the holly leaves and berries symbolic of Christ's crown of thorns and blood, according to the New York Times. Today's wreaths, which come in all varieties, from flowers and fruit to glass balls and ribbon to artificial and themed, are most often seen as secular winter tradition. Christmas cards. The first official Christmas card debuted in 1843 England with the simple message, "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you." The idea of a mailed winter holiday greeting gradually caught on in both Britain and the US, with the Kansas City-based Hall Brothers, now Hallmark, creating a folded card sold with an envelope in 1915. Today, according to the Greeting Card Association, more than 1.6 billion holiday cards are sold annually. I'm in the wrong business. It's a Wonderful Life. Frank Capra's classic Christmas film debuted in 1946 with Jimmy Stewart playing George Bailey, a suicidal man who was shown what life would be like without him by an angel. But before becoming an annual TV viewing tradition, the movie was a bit of a flop at the box office when it premiered, although it did receive 5 Oscar nominations, but no wins. A lapsed copyright in the 1970s allowed TV stations to air the movie for free. It had aired exclusively on NBC in the USA since 1994. Christmas lights. Thomas Edison may be famous for the light bulb, but it was his partner and friend Edward Hibbert Johnson who had made the bright idea of stringing bulbs around a Christmas tree in New York in 1882. By 1914, the lights were being mass-produced, and now some 150 million sets of lights are sold in the U.S. each year. I think Clark Griswold contributed to about maybe 10% of that one year. If you get the joke, I applaud you. Department store Santa. The lining up at the mall to snap a photo of the kids on Santa's lap may seem like a modern Christmas tradition, but it dates back to 1890 when James Edgar of Brockton, Massachusetts had a Santa suit made for him and dressed as the jolly fellow at his dry goods store. The gimmick caught on, and a year later Santas would be found in many stores. While many point to Edgar had a gas bubble. While many point to Edgar as the original store Santa, Macy's in New York claims it has been hosting Santa since 1862. Making fun of fruitcake. Is fruitcake even that bad? Like, I've never tried it, but I've always heard it's like the butt of every Christmas joke, just about. A favorite of the Brits, both Princess Diana and Kate Middleton served it at their weddings. Fruitcake, that much maligned mix of dried fruit, nuts, and brandy, has been the subject of long-running American holiday jokes. Truman Capote wrote a story about the fruitcake weather in 1956. The small town of Manitou Springs, Colorado, holds an annual fruitcake toss day on January 3rd, and the dessert has become fodder for many a comedian. For example, in 1985, Johnny Carson cracked the worst Christmas gift is a fruitcake. There is only one fruitcake in the entire world, and people keep sending it to each other. I haven't heard that one. That's funny, though. Like, I don't know if y'all have watched Ed Deddy, but they had that one episode where it's about Christmas in July. And they had that whole gag about the ancestral fruitcake. Oh, my God. I need to watch the Christmas special now. Cookie swaps. For more than 100 years, Americans have spent time baking up a storm to exchange cookies at one of these events where participants bring a dozen of their favorite cookies. Then guests trade and head home with an array of goodies. In her book, The Cookie Party Cookbook, Robin Olson writes that she found references to cookie parties dating back to the late 1800s and that they began to be called cookie exchanges by the 1930s and cookie swaps in the 50s. Historically, cookie exchange parties have been a ladies only event. Exchanges were hosted by friends, relatives, neighbors, social groups, clubs, office coworkers, teams, schools, and churches, she writes. Now they often include children and men are frequently used as fundraisers. A visit from St. Nick. Best known as The Night Before Christmas, the reading of this classic by poet Clement Moore is an American holiday tradition. Believed to have been written on Christmas Eve of 1822, the New Yorker is said to have been inspired by his sleigh ride home. According to the U.S. Library of Congress, Clement, a professor at the General Theological Seminary in Manhattan, was embarrassed by the work which was made public without his knowledge in December of 1823. Moore did not publish it under his name until 1844. Well, sir, you have written something extremely iconic. Luminarias. Simple folded brown bags filled with sand and lit by votive candles are particularly popular in the Southwest. Dating back to more than 300 years, they line the sidewalks and churches in places such as Albuquerque and Santa Fe, New Mexico. In Phoenix, the annual Las Noches de la Luminarias at the Desert Botanical Garden features more than 8,000 luminaria bags. Ooh, I bet that's cool to see. The 12 Days of Christmas. Even though most hear the song between Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, the Christian 12 Days of Christmas, which span the birth of Jesus and the visit of the Magi, actually take place from December 25th to January 6th. The earliest version of the poem turned song is thought to have been published in Mirth Without Mischief, a children's book from 1780 with the modern version credited to English composer Frederick Austin, who set the poem to music. Each year, the PNC Christmas Price Index totals out the total cost of the 12 gifts named in the song based on current markets. For 2019, from everything from a partridge in a pear tree to 12 drummers strumming would run up a bill of $38,993.59. Somebody actually ran the calculations for that? What? Oh, that's hilarious. Poinsettias, or poinsettias, however you pronounce it. America's Christmas flower, these plants native to Central America were brought to the United States and given their name by the country's first U.S. ambassador to Mexico, botanist Joel Roberts Poinsett, in the 1820s. It was a California horticulturist named Paul Eck who brought the traditionally red and green plants to the masses 100 years later. He donated the plants to TV shows, and according to the Los Angeles Times, the poinsettia became the best-selling potted plant in the nation by 1986. Well, neato. I mean, they are pretty to look at. Salvation Army bell ringers. Come December, bell ringers span out to accept donations in their iconic red kettles. Collecting money for the needy since 1891, the tradition started with San Francisco Salvation Army Captain Joseph McPhee, wanted to raise money to offer a free Christmas dinner to 1,000 of the city's most destitute. Inspired by a kettle he had seen in England in which people tossed in coins for the poor, he set up his own version, and the idea quickly spread across the country and the world. Today, the Salvation Army helps more than 4.5 million people during the holiday season, and they don't only accept cash. Donations can be made via smartphones. So are they smart buckets now? I don't know. Alrighty. Now we're moving on to who invented candy canes? One theory claims the iconic holiday candy was created in Germany to appease fidgety choir boys. Okay, let's read on about this. If anyone had cause to wonder about the allure of the candy cane, look no further than the words of Will Ferrell's Buddy the Elf. We elves try to stick to the four main food groups: candy, candy canes, candy corns, and syrup. In fact, according to the National Confectioners Association, alwaysatreat.com, candy canes are the number one selling non chocolate candy during the month of December, with 90% of the red and white striped treats sold between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The biggest single week for candy canes? The second week of December, likely because most people decorate their Christmas trees that week. Carly Schildhouse, Public Affairs Manager for the NCA. But just when and how candy canes got their start is a bit more uncertain than their popularity. 1.76 billion candy canes are produced in the United States annually. Boy. Legend has it, let's say, the candy cane invented to quiet choir boys. Legend has it the candy cane dats candy cane dats. Anyway, legend has it that the candy cane dates back to 1670, when the choir master at the Cologne Cathedral in Germany handed out sugar sticks among his young singers to keep them quiet during the live creche ceremony. In honor of the occasion, he bent the candles into shepherd's crooks. Candies, not candles. Ooh, edible wax. Anyway, Susan Benjamin, founder of the True Treats Historic Candy and author of Sweet as Sin, the unwrapped story of how candy became America's pleasure, agrees that the candy cane was most likely took shape in the 17th century Europe when pulled sugars, apparent to today's sugar sticks, were all the rage. It was at the time somewhere in Germany that a crook was added to the stick, she says. Benjamin also cites the theory that a German choir master gave candy sticks to still his fidgety choir boys during services. It was a gentler form of enticement than whacking them with a switch. The board complained sweets were not appropriate at so solemn a place as church, Benjamin explains, so the choir master added a hook, making the stick resemble a staff, a religious reference that would calm the board's concerns. She says the story has some credibility, but it's just as likely Germans added the hook to hang them from trees alongside cookies, fruits, and other trees. Candy canes were once only white. Most, however, agree the white candy cane in the U.S. debuted in 1847 in Worcester, Ohio, according to Schildhouse, when August Imgard, a German-Swedish immigrant who decorated a small blue spruce with paper ornaments and candy canes. Of course, today there's nothing more iconic when it comes to candy than the alternating red and white stripes of the candy cane. But, according to Schildhouse, for 200 years before mass production was automated, it came in just one color: white. At the turn of the 20th century, the red stripes and peppermint flavor emerged as the most popular choice, she says. Benjamin attributes the red and white stripes to good marketing. Theories about candy cane stripes and colors. With the stripe came legends of stories about the candy cane, such as it being a secret code among persecuted Christians in Germany or England in the 17th century. A secret language amongst the Christian faithful depending on the stripe. 3 represented the Trinity, 1 Jesus' sacrifice, she said, adding, and the more general role of the stripe as the blood of Jesus. True? I'm not sure, Benjamin says. Still, other theories contend the candy cane's J shape as an homage to Jesus, but Benjamin says that's an urban legend. As for the best way to eat the Yuletide treat, Schildhouse says an NCA survey found that 72% of people that think starting on the straight end is the proper way to eat a candy cane, while 28% start at the curved end. Interesting. So we learned a little history about the candy canes. Now, 7 historical events that took place on Christmas. Get the facts on 7 famous historical events that fell on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Number 1. Charlemagne is crowned Holy Roman Emperor. Often called the father of Europe, Charlemagne was a Frankish warrior king who united much of the continent under the banner of the Carolingian Empire. Carolingian Empire. Wow. Beginning in the late 700s, Charlemagne forged a vast kingdom through extensive military campaigns against the Saxons, the Lombards, and the Avars. A devout Catholic, he also aggressively converted his subjects to Christianity and instituted strict religious reforms. On Christmas Day in 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans during a ceremony at St. Peter's Basilica. The controversial coronation restored the Western Roman Empire in name and established Charlemagne as the divinely appointed leader of most of Europe. More importantly, it has placed him on equal footing with the Byzantine Empress Irene, who ruled over the Eastern Empire in Constantinople. Charlemagne would serve as emperor for 13 years, and his legal and educational reforms sparked a cultural revival and unified much of Europe for the first time since the fall of the Roman Empire. Number 2. William the Conqueror is crowned King of England. The 1066 holiday season played host to an event that permanently changed the course of European history. On Christmas Day, William, Duke of Normandy, best known as William the Conqueror, was crowned King of England at Westminster Abbey in London. This coronation came in the wake of William's legendary invasion of the British Isles, which ended in October 1066 with a victory over King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings. William the Conqueror's 21-year rule would see many Norman customs and laws find their way into English life. After consolidating his power by building famous structures such as the Tower of London and Windsor Castle, William also gave copious land grants to his French-speaking allies. This not only permanently changed the development of the English language, nearly one-third of modern English is derived from French words, but has also contributed to the rise of the feudal system of government that characterized much of the Middle Ages. Number 3. George Washington and the Continental Army crossed the Delaware River. America, fuck yeah. Anyway. At the end of 1776, the Revolutionary War looked like it might be lost for colonial forces. A series of defeats by the British depleted morale, and many soldiers deserted the Continental Army. Desperate to strike a decisive victory, on Christmas Day, General George Washington led 2,400 troops on a daring nighttime crossing of the icy Delaware River. Stealing into New Jersey on December 26, the Continental forces launched a surprise attack on Trenton, which was held by a force of German soldiers known as Hessians. General Washington's gamble paid off. Many of the Hessians were still disoriented from the previous night's holiday bender, and colonial forces defeated them with minimal bloodshed. While Washington had pulled off a shock victory, his army was unequipped to hold the city and was forced to recross the Delaware the same day, this time with nearly 1,000 Hessian prisoners in tow. Washington would go on to score successive victories at the battles of the Assunpink Creek and Princeton, and his audacious crossing of the frozen Delaware served as a crucial rallying cry for the beleaguered Continental Army. 1814, so number 4, the Treaty of Ghent ends the War of 1812. On December 24, 1814, while many in the Western world celebrated Christmas Eve, the United States and Great Britain sat down to sign a famous peace ending the War of 1812. Negotiations had begun in Ghent, Belgium, earlier that August, the same month that British forces burned the White House in the U.S. Capitol in Washington. After more than 4 months of debate, the American and British delegations agreed to a settlement that essentially ended the war as a draw. All conquered territories were relinquished, and captured soldiers and vessels were returned to their respective nations. Well, while the Treaty of Ghent effectively ended the 32-month conflict, it did not take effect in the United States until it was ratified in February 1815. In fact, one of the greatest American victories of the war, at the Battle of New Orleans in January 1815, came more than a week after the Treaty of Ghent had been signed. Number 5. President Andrew Johnson issues a final pardon to Confederate soldiers. At the end of his term as president, Andrew Johnson gave a handful of former Confederate rebels a famous Christmas present. By the way of Proclamation 179, on December 25, 1868, Johnson issued an amnesty to all and every person who had fought against the United States during the Civil War. And at the tail end of the term as president, Andrew Johnson gave a handful of former Confederate soldiers. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I just read that part. Johnson's blanket pardon was actually the fourth in a series of post-war amnesty orders dating back to May 1865. Earlier agreements had restored legal and political rights to Confederate soldiers in exchange for signed oaths of allegiance to the United States. But these pardons exempted 14 classes of people, including certain officers, government officials, and those with property valued over $20,000. This Christmas pardon stood as the final and unconditional act of forgiveness for unreconstructed Southerners, including many former Confederate generals. Number 6, which is the next event we're going to be watching a video about. The World War I Christmas truce is reached. The year 1914 saw the Christmas spirit manifest itself in the most unlikely of places, a World War I battlefield. Starting on the evening of December 24th, scores of German, British, and French troops in Belgium laid down their arms and initiated a spontaneous holiday ceasefire. The truce was reportedly instigated by the Germans, who decorated their trenches with Christmas trees and candles and began singing carols like Silent Night. British troops responded with their own rendition of the first Noel, and weary combatants eventually ventured into no man's land, the treacherous bombed-out space that separated the trenches, to greet one another and shake hands. According to accounts from the men involved, the soldiers shared cigarettes and pulls of whiskey, and some exchanged Christmas presents with men they had been shooting at only hours before. Taking advantage of the brief lull in combat, some Scottish, English, and German troops even played a pickup game of soccer on the frozen battlefield. The truce was not sanctioned by officers on either side, and eventually the men were called back to their respective trenches to resume fighting. Later attempts at holiday meetings were mostly forbidden, but as the war dragged on, the Christmas truce would stand as a remarkable example of shared humanity and brotherhood on the battlefield. Number 7. Apollo 8 orbits the moon. As part of 1968's Apollo 8 mission, astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders spent the night before Christmas orbiting the moon. The operation was originally planned to test out the lunar module, later used in the Apollo 11 moon landing in Earth's orbit. But when work on the module fell behind schedule, NASA ambitiously changed the mission plan to a lunar voyage. Apollo 8 went on to result in a series of breakthroughs for manned spaceflight. The 3 astronauts became the first men to leave Earth's gravitational pull, the first to orbit the moon, the first to view all of Earth from space, and the first to see the dark side of the moon. Apollo 8 is perhaps best remembered today for the broadcast the 3 astronauts made when they entered the moon's orbit on Christmas Eve. As viewers were shown pictures of the moon and Earth from lunar orbit, Borman, Lovell, and Anders read the opening lines of the book of Genesis from the Bible. The broadcast, which ended with the famous line, "Merry Christmas and God bless you all of you on the good earth," became one of the most watched television events in history. All right. Now, we are on to a video about the Christmas truce of 1914. And I will hush now so that you guys can hang on. Hang on. Let me get the chat out of the way here so you guys can watch this. No problem. I didn't realize I had that on the whole time. Oops. Anyway, now we will go ahead and watch this. Actually, wait, let me put that into theater mode here because that would probably be better.
Today's Sabaton History episode is not about a battle. It's not about a weapon. It's not about like a tank or a plane. It's not even about a person involved in a war, yet it is about the Great War.
It is, of course, the Christmas truce.
My favorite band ever. Featuring this wonderfully, beautifully made song.
You'll be home before the first leaves fall, they said. The war will be over by Christmas, they said. Well, the leaves had all fallen, and by late December 1914, there was no end in sight to the Great War. As the soldiers realized that they would spend winter in the miserable trenches, morale plummeted. What would happen, I wonder, Winston Churchill wrote to his wife in mid-December, if the armies suddenly and simultaneously went on strike and said some other method must be found for settling their dispute? He would soon find out. The professional armies of career soldiers who had fought each other over the summer were largely gone by now, dead, wounded, or prisoners. In their stead stood conscripted men and disillusioned wartime volunteers, trapped in the horrors of trench warfare.
Yep.
Both sides spent their days sharing their meager rations with rats, fleas, and lice. They slept in damp underground dugouts and caves, while the forward sentries tried to keep awake in the mud and the sleet. The whole trench system was still seen as temporary, though, and breakthrough would come soon, so it lacked any kind of comfort or sophistication. And beyond the parapets? Well, on December 21st, British Colonel Swinton wrote, "This is the Ultima Thule. Beyond is neutral territory, the no man's land between the hostile forces. It is strewn with the dead of both sides, some lying, others caught or propped on the sagging wire where they may have been for days, still others half buried in craters or destroyed parapets." When winter began and the temperature dropped, an increased lethargy was noticed by officers on both sides. Soldiers were literally sick of the worsening conditions, of being constantly exposed to the cold, the rain, and the enemy guns. The aggressive policies put in place by high command to keep the infantry busy only made things worse. Patrolling through the nights, keeping watch over the parapets, throwing bombs and sniping at the enemy, it all seemed so futile. All it did was increase their own chances of getting killed.
We'll be reading How the Grinch Stole Christmas after this video. It's almost done. Well, I mean, the stream anyway.
This led to a number of unofficial truces all over the front, a live and let live system. You let me sleep, I let you sleep. You don't fire on our latrines, we won't shoot up yours. Sometimes grenades were intentionally thrown to the side, or code words were exchanged, signaling a coming bombardment. It was a basic, almost natural understanding that there were limits to war. This is important in order to understand what would happen in the days around Christmas. The Champagne offensive began the week before Christmas. After a series of attacks and counterattacks, no man's land was once more littered with the bodies of the fallen. The overall mood inside the trenches was as terrible as the weather, with men up to their knees in mud and water. Then the first incidents happened. German soldiers were heard asking about a ceasefire. Hands in the air, they indicated that they wanted to go out and take care of the wounded in no man's land and bury the decaying bodies. The British agreed and went out to do the same. It was all spontaneous, but suddenly men were passing each other over the battlefield without firing a shot. In some cases, they even had a quick chat or shared a cigarette. People sometimes overestimate the size of no man's land, but the trenches were usually 200 meters apart max, often less than half that. The forward saps were even closer. Day and night, the men could hear each other talking or yelling and singing. Conversations between the two sides were not uncommon. When a German soldier was seen carrying a wounded British soldier back to the line, he was thanked and granted a safe passage back.
Huh.
Christmas Eve morning, the Christmas gifts arrived. Chocolate and sweets, cigarettes and tobacco, and hundreds of thousands of small packages and letters from home. This raised morale tremendously, but also magnified the feelings of homesickness and the desire for peace and a return to normal life. Men began shouting and teasing each other, "Fritz, Tommy, come across, we meet halfway." But they were hesitant. A few brave souls went out at their own risk. There are many different stories, but over the course of the day, there were even incidents of British and German officers talking about a possible ceasefire on Christmas Day.
Huh.
By evening, soldiers lit candles in the trenches. Some even set up small Christmas trees. The men sang the all-time classics in English and German, like Stille Nacht, The First Noel, and O Come All Ye Faithful. For most devout Christians, Christmas was the most important day of the year. And the celebration of the birth of Christ stood in many ways in stark contrast to the reality of the war itself. Around midnight, everything went eerily quiet. And on Christmas morning, as the fog disappeared, the stillness remained. Instead of the cracking of rifles, men heard the chirping of birds. Everyone in the sector wondered what would happen next. Soldiers once more began talking to each other. Boxes of food and souvenirs were thrown across to the other side. A few men exposed themselves above the parapets, then more followed. A basic agreement was made. No one would fire unless fired upon. In some places where the ceasefire had indeed been arranged beforehand, further rules were set in place. First of all, if either side fired a shot with the intent to kill, the truce was immediately off. Action by artillery did not count, nor did it break the truce, as they had no control over the batteries far to the rear of the trenches. If an order was given to open fire, they would shoot the first 3 rounds into the air to give the other side time to get under cover. If there were orders to expend a certain amount of ammunition this day, the machine gunners would waste ammo in the evening hours after a shrill warning signal. Neither side was allowed to erect barbed wire or repair their trenches during the truce. Still, everything depended on trust and an unwritten code of honor. A machine gun could cut them all down within seconds. Yet no one shot. Men venturing out did not even carry arms. Some waved a white flag, and the men, mortal enemies just a day before, met and shook hands, talked, and exchanged gifts. For a few hours, it was peace. There were, of course, some officers who went straight to headquarters to report this, and plenty of men who did not take part. But overall, the mood was far from being hostile. It was this weird realization that the other side was just as human as their own side.
Yep.
Silence. Oh, I remember the silence on a cold winter day. After many months on the battlefield,
Beautiful song.
and we were used to the violence. Then all the candles went silent, and the snow fell. Voices sang to me from no man's land. We are all, we are all, we are all, we are all friends.
The most iconic moment of the truce is, of course, the football match in no man's land. It was as spontaneous as everything else that day, and the stories all vary. A ball appeared from somewhere. I don't know where, but it came from their side. They made up some goals, and one fellow went in goal, and then it was just a general kickabout. I should think there were a couple of hundred taking part. I had a go at the ball. Everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves. There was no sort of ill will between us. There was no referee, no score, no tally at all. Private Williams of the Cheshire Regiment. A couple of English brought a football out of their trench, and a vigorous football match began. This was also marvelous and strange. The English officers thought so too. Towards the evening, the officers asked whether a big football match could be held the following day between the two positions. Sachsen-Leutnant Zemich. No man's land had seemed 10 miles across when we were crawling out on a night patrol, but now we found it no wider than the width of 2 football pitches. We provided the football and set up stretchers as goalposts, and the Reverend Jolly, our padre, acted as referee. They beat us 3-2. Robert Graves,
wow.
Royal Welsh Fusiliers. As it started getting dark,
Wow.
men shook hands and went back to their trenches. The Christmas truce was a unique and rare moment in history, sure. It was both spontaneous and to a certain degree foreseeable. Of course, it didn't happen everywhere. Hundreds of men still died, and parts of the front were as busy as they were every other day. And the Western Front was just one of many battlefronts in the war. On Christmas Day, Ottoman soldiers by the tens of thousands were busy freezing to death in the disastrous Battle of Sarikamish in eastern Anatolia. But for those that experienced the truce, it was something they'd never forget. In some places it lasted a few hours, somewhere else it lasted to the next day, but it could not go on forever. As the news went up the chain of command, generals on both sides were quick to snuff it out. Fraternization was deemed a crime against the nation. Participating units were rotated out of the lines, and their officers were threatened with court-martial. High command ordered inspections and speeches and shamed the men at the front. Did you shake hands with those that bayoneted babies in Belgium? Did you exchange gifts with the bastards that killed your brother yesterday? Although the press back home was quick to take up the story, censorship soon cracked down on its telling. The whole truce became taboo. Official war history denied that it ever happened. It only lived on through the memories of those that had participated and who had shared the stories with those back home. As
trying
the
to
war
erase
went
history.
on, the animosity between sides became ever greater. Poison gas, flamethrowers, the sinking of merchant ships, the slaughter at the Somme and Verdun, all made sure that the Christmas truce in the West would not repeat itself. Of course, there would be smaller truces all over the war on all fronts for such things as retrieving bodies. Informal arrangements were respected, but this level of fraternization, this antithesis to war, would never be again reached. Not until the end. Still, Churchill got his answer. For a single day, the opposing forces mingled in friendly conversation and even in games. It was an amazing spectacle and must arouse bitter thoughts concerning those high-ranking conspirators against the peace of the world who in their mad ambition had hounded such men on to take each other by the throat rather than by the hand. Arthur Conan Doyle.
It is such a beautiful thing that it even happened in the midst of one of the worst things ever. Oh, they have parts of the music video in here. Yes.
Hey, Per.
Hey, Indy. Hey, there's something that looks a little bit different on you than normally.
Is it the kavai? Yeah?
No. It's you've done something to your face.
Yeah. You know, I completely forgot about that. Funny story, though. You want to know how that happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope it's a good Christmas story.
It's a good story. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's Christmas time.
Yeah, what
right?
did happen?
It was Christmas time, and because I'm a good guy, I was doing some charity work, right? And there were these orphans and nuns.
I think that's
in an
basically the
orphanage.
majority
Although
of
it was a
the story about the
non-denominational
Christmas
orphanage,
truce is
'cause Christmas
pretty
is
much
really
done.
about to celebrate giving.
kinda
and the
curious
human
about this,
spirit
though.
and stuff. You could put religion in it if you like, but you know what I mean, right? So, but I'm there and I'm dressed as Santa Claus, right? And I'm giving out presents to all of the orphans from all over the world. They were all good orphans. There were no bad ones. Nobody got like a lump of coal or anything. And they got Sabaton albums. Different ones. Some got the Art of War, and this guy got the Great War, because everybody loves Sabaton.
Oh my
Orphans
God,
love Sabaton.
what?
And nuns too. Nuns love Sabaton too. Well, it's going along great, but one of the nuns was smoking, right? And there was like,
They got
the bunting,
Sabaton
the
albums
crepe
for
paper and
Christmas?
stuff like that,
Dude,
which is
I'm so
pretty flammable.
jealous.
And it started going up. And we realized that since it was cold, because it was Christmas, the pipes were frozen, so there's no water, right? So we couldn't put it out. So suddenly, the whole orphanage, the non-denominational orphanage, is a raging inferno. And I'm like, save the orphans, save the orphans. So
That's probably
I
a
start
made-up
grabbing
story
orphans
anyway.
like one, two at a time. And I'm running out of the thing, and people are going, "Hi, Indy, save the orphans." I'm saving the orphans. But the thing is, there's a lot of smoke. There's smoke everywhere because it's a fire, right? And I'm breathing in the smoke, and I start coughing. But my coughing is coming like, whoo. I'm going like, whoo, whoo, whoo. And the flames carrying kids. I look like the most satanic Santa Claus you ever seen. But I was actually a good Santa Claus because I was saving orphans, right? And I get like all the orphans out, and the nun, and one, she apologized for smoking, and I got everybody's out there and stuff, and we're lying there in the snow out there, and I stand up and I hear this voice from behind me, and it was the Mother Superior, and she said, "Indy, come here for a second." I turned around and I walked right into the door.
Oh, damn.
I took a layer of skin off my nose. Can you believe that?
No. But what happened to the one who was smoking? She's still smoking?
No.
Okay, good.
Look, no human beings are perfect. I'm not mocking orphans or nuns or myself or you. No, I mean, smoking has several severe consequences. If you're a long-term smoker, you know what they are.
That was a hell of a story he just came up with on the fly.
None or no none.
Unless that was already scripted, I don't know.
Well, I'm glad we had this talk. I'm glad we had this talk today. So let me ask you a question about the Christmas Truce episode. It is one of the most iconic things of the First World War, the most iconic occurrences.
Got more
certainly
stuff
non-battle related stuff. But yet, when you
truce.
did the Great War, it's not on that. Now, did you consider a song about the Christmas Truce for the first Great War album, or why is it only now coming?
Yeah, that's a good... I mean, it is exactly like you said. We were considering it, of course, for the first album, for the Great War album. Of all the topics of World War I, the most requested was, please do a song that is not about battles, do something about peace, do about the Christmas truce.
Right.
And we wanted to do it, but it's also about creating a good, suitable song for it.
Okay.
And we didn't do that. We couldn't write the right song for it. And it was
Okay,
always
now they're
in our
just going
mind,
on
maybe
about
we
the
should
song
do
for
another
it, but
song to just add.
it's such a beautiful song. I mean, I absolutely love it. I mean, if you guys have not heard Christmas Truce by Sabaton, I highly recommend it. You've already heard some of it, but just within this video. But it is so, so good. It's so beautiful. And the music video, top notch. Top notch. They had high production value for that. In which I will tell you, before we finally move on to the event of the evening, the main event, the drummer for this band actually is married to someone named Floor Jensen. She is a fantastic vocalist. And at the end of the music video, when the credits are rolling, you will hear her vocals. And oh my God, she is amazing. Like every time I hear her vocals in that, it gives me goosebumps. That's how good it is. So I highly recommend you check out the video on the Christmas Truce. Listen to the song. It's amazing. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now a reading of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Oh, sorry, scroll wheel messed up. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below to their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings. I was right ahead. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here. Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming. For now, tomorrow he knew. And all the Who's girls and boys would make bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. Then the Who's young and old would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and a rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch could not stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Who's would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've come up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and coat. And he chuckled and chucked. What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and his hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, and he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up to old Max. Then the Grinch said, Get up, and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All of their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue. Where are the little Who stockings all hung up in a row? These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, and the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimney. Then he snuck to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last of the Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was no more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch was so smart and slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little my sweet little tot." Sorry about that. The faint Santa Claus lied. "There is a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll hang it back here." And his fib fooled the child. He then patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Excuse me. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 past dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmage, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. "Pooh, pooh to the Who's," he was grinchiously humming. "They'll find out how now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo." "That's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. For every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch with his grinchy feet ice cold in the snow stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he pushed 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. He puzzled 3 hours. I thought it said pushed. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. And there we are, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end of the stream for tonight. So here we are. So tomorrow night, I will be back with a couple more stories. One about, we're probably going to read two more stories. It's going to be really, really short tomorrow night, but we will read Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and then 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. But anyway, it's time for me to wrap this up now. Thank you everybody who has stopped by, decided to take a watch, and yeah. And as always, I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.